Chapter 38. Moonlight filtered through ancient oak branches, casting delicate silver webs across the forest clearing. Isabella stood at the edge of the ceremonial ground, her heart pounding against her ribs as she watched the pack assemble. Torches blazed around the perimeter, their flames dancing in the light breeze, illuminating the faces of those who had become her unlikely allies, and now perhaps her family. The scent of pine resin and wood smoke hung heavy in the air, mingling with the earthy musk she'd recognized as distinctly lichen. Nervous, Katerina appeared beside her. The only remaining sign of her wound was a slight stiffness in her movements. Her voice carried its usual clipped precision, though softer than when they'd first met. Moonlight gleamed off the polished silver buckles of her ceremonial leather jacket. Isabella took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders by reflex. Is it that obvious? Only to someone watching for it. Katerina's usual stern expression softened, the hard lines around her mouth relaxing. The flickering torchlight carved dramatic shadows across her angular features. I've seen legacies of a pack quake in their boots at their acceptance ceremonies. You're doing fine. I'm not afraid, Isabella said, then amended with a self-deprecating smile. Not exactly. It's more, I never thought I'd be here. I built cases against Atlanta's criminals 6 months ago in a fluorescent-lit office. Now I'm about to join a lichen pack in a moonlit ceremony. Katerina's laugh was unexpectedly warm, her usual military bearing briefly giving way to genuine amusement. Life has strange and winding paths planned for us, prosecutor. She still used the title, though Isabella had officially resigned from the district attorney's office 3 days ago. You have found your way to yours. Did I? Or did I just trip over it while chasing a murderer? Isabella's fingers worried at a loose thread on her sleeve. Does it matter? Katerina's gaze swept across the gathering, her eyes reflecting golden in the torchlight. Look at them. They're here for you. A human. Do you know how rare that is? Isabella followed her gaze. Nearly 50 pack members had gathered in the clearing, arranged in a loose semicircle. Some she recognized from the Warren, others from the dance floor at Ferrell. Everyone watched her with expressions ranging from curiosity to respect. The scattered moonlight illuminated their faces in patches, casting the rest in shadow, giving them an otherworldly appearance. At the far edge, she spotted Damon talking animatedly with one of the younger wolves, gesturing with his hands in that enthusiastic way he used to explain something technical. Damon seems to be doing well, Isabella observed, a fond smile softening her features as she watched her former assistant miming what appeared to be computer configurations. Your assistant has useful skills and an open mind. Katerina straightened her jacket. Black leather adorned with silver symbols that Isabella now recognized as ancient pack markings. The enforcer moved with the precise economy that defined her, no motion wasted. It's time. Are you ready? Isabella smoothed the front of her attire, a deep blue dress that Mikhail had presented to her that evening, its fabric embroidered with subtle patterns. The silk moved like water against her skin, foreign yet somehow right for this moment, whispering with each movement. She lifted her chin with that characteristic determination that had carried her through countless legal battles. As ready as I'll ever be. She followed Katerina toward the center of the clearing, where Mikhail stood waiting. The soft pine needles and moss cushioned her steps, releasing a fresh, resinous scent with each footfall. The sight of him still caught her breath. Tall and powerful in ceremonial black, silver embroidery catching the moonlight. But his eyes held her, intense and focused entirely on her as she approached. His gaze carried the weight of decades, perhaps centuries, yet brightened with something like wonder as she drew near. The assembled pack fell silent. From somewhere in the surrounding forest, a wolf howled. A real wolf, not one of the pack in shifted form. The sound echoed through the trees, rising and falling like a forgotten melody, sending a shiver down Isabella's spine and raising goosebumps along her arms. Mikhail extended his hand as she reached him. Isabella. It was just her name, but it was weighted with meaning in his accented voice. The slight roll of consonants betrayed his Russian origins, centuries of living in America, having failed to entirely erase them. She placed her hand in his, feeling the familiar warmth of his skin and the subtle strength of his fingers, which could transform to claws in seconds. His thumb brushed across her knuckles in a gesture invisible to most observers. "The moon is high," Mikhail addressed the gathered pack, his voice carrying across the clearing without effort. The natural authority in his tone making everyone straighten slightly. The silver light bathed his features, highlighting the aristocratic angles of his face. "Tonight, we welcome one who has proven herself worthy through courage, loyalty, and strength." A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience, heads nodding, some eyes flashing amber in approval. "Isabella Santos came to us as an adversary," Mikhail continued, his accent thickening slightly with emotion. "Seeking justice for those she believed we had harmed. When she discovered the truth, she fought beside us against a real evil. She risked her life for our pack. She sacrificed her position in human society to protect our secrets." Isabella felt the weight of every gaze upon her. She stood straighter, meeting their eyes without hesitation. These past months had taught her not to flinch from the intensity of Lycan's attention. "Is there any among you who challenges her right to join us?" Mikhail's question rang out, carrying a subtle resonance of alpha power that made several wolves lower their eyes instinctively. Silence answered him, broken only by the soft crackle of torches and the occasional rustle of night creatures in the undergrowth. Isabella released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, her shoulders dropping slightly with relief. "Then let the ceremony begin." 4 pack members stepped forward, Katerina among them, each carrying an item wrapped in cloth. They formed a square around Isabella and Mikhail, their precise and ritualistic movements. Katerina unwrapped her bundle first, revealing an ornate silver dagger with a moonstone in its hilt. The blade gleamed with an almost blue-white luster in the moonlight, seeming to gather and reflect the silver light until it nearly hurt to look at directly. "Silver?" Isabella whispered to Mikhail, surprised. "We aren't allergic to pure silver," he murmured back, his breath warm against her ear, carrying the scent of wild mint and something darker, more primal. "Only when it enters the bloodstream. The myths get some details wrong." A hint of amusement colored his tone, which he used whenever correcting human misconceptions about his kind. Katerina presented the dagger to Mikhail with a formal bow, her movements fluid and graceful, despite her warrior's bearing. "The blade of judgment," she announced, her voice taking on a formal cadence unlike her usual clipped speech. "Forged in moonlight, passed down since the first Alpha led our kind from persecution. It tests the worthy and punishes the false. Mikhail accepted the blade, holding it up, so moonlight gleamed along its edge. His expression became solemn, almost reverent. He turned to Isabella. "I offer judgment and protection," he said, his voice pitched for her alone, though she suspected many could hear in the unnatural quiet of the clearing. "My strength becomes your strength. My enemies become your enemies." He turned the blade, offering her the hilt. Isabella took it, feeling its unexpected weight, the cold metal warming quickly against her palm. The handle fit her hand as though crafted for her grip, the moonstone cool and smooth against her fingers. The pack watched, intent and silent, some leaning forward slightly, as if her response carried particular significance. "I accept your judgment," she said clearly, carrying without shouting, "and offer my loyalty in return. My mind becomes your resource. My heart becomes your compass." The words were not rehearsed. She had been told only that she should speak from the truth when the moment came. She knew she had chosen correctly from Mikhail's approving nod and the subtle softening around his eyes. The second pack member stepped forward. An elderly man, Isabella recognized as the pack historian. His gnarled hands carefully unwrapped a small wooden box engraved with spiraling patterns, the polished wood gleaming with years of handling. "The earth that grounds us," he intoned, his voice cracking with age, opening the box to reveal dark soil. The scent rose immediately, rich loam minerals, and something ancient that reminded Isabella of caves she'd explored as a child. From the territories our ancestors claimed and we now protect. Mikhail took a pinch of the soil and pressed it gently to Isabella's forehead. "May you always find your way home," he said, his fingers lingering briefly against her skin. Isabella closed her eyes at his touch, surprised by the electric tingle from the point of contact. The soil smelled rich and vital, alive with history, conjuring impressions of ancient forests and countless moons. The third pack member, a young woman named Isabella, who had helped evacuate during the siege, her amber eyes still holding a trace of the fear from that night, approached with a silver chalice filled with water that caught the moonlight like liquid silver. "The waters of life that connect all beings," she said, her voice trembling slightly with the honor of her role, her hands clasping the chalice with reverent care. The water inside rippled with her movement, reflecting dancing fragments of torchlight. Mikhail dipped his fingers in the water and traced a line from Isabella's forehead to her heart. "May your spirit flow freely among us," he said, his eyes tracking the path his fingers made with an intensity that made Isabella's breath catch. The cool trail of water against Isabella's skin left goosebumps in its wake, the droplets tracing a path that felt like ice and fire simultaneously. Like a current awakening, she felt something stir inside her, flowing through veins that had never known such sensations before. The fourth bundle was unwrapped by a muscular man Isabella recognized as one of Mikhail's most trusted fighters. He was a werewolf who had taken silver shrapnel at the water treatment plant and spent time in the medical bay recovering alongside Harper. His scarred hands revealed a small stone basin containing glowing embers. Heat radiated from the basin, bringing the aromatic scent of burning cedar and sage. "The fire of transformation," he announced, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. "That which changes us, burns away weakness, and leaves strength behind." Mikhail passed his hand through the smoke, rising from the embers, then touched Isabella's lips with ash-darkened fingers. "May your words carry truth, and your presence bring warmth," he said, his gaze dropping to her mouth with unmistakable tenderness. Isabella tasted salt and wood smoke and felt them burn slightly against her skin, bitter yet somehow cleansing. Each gesture, each element seemed to resonate within her, as though awakening something she hadn't known existed before, a dormant part of herself responding to ancient rituals. "Earth," Mikhail said to the assembled pack, turning slightly to include them all in the moment. "Water, fire, and silver, the test of our nature and the symbol of our covenant. Isabella Santos has been judged and found worthy." He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. His palms were warm against hers, his fingers interlacing with a gentle pressure that conveyed more than words could. "There is one final step," he said, his voice intimate, despite their audience, his accent thickening slightly with emotion. "For most who join us, the bite is the gateway. Your path is different. You choose to remain human in body while joining our pack in spirit." Murmurs rippled through the gathering, like wind through autumn leaves. Isabella sensed this was the part many found strangest. A human truly joining their ranks, not as prey, not as temporary ally, but as pack. Some shifted their weight uncomfortably. Others watched with open curiosity. "Instead of the bite, I offer the bond," Mikhail continued, his thumbs making small circles against her palms. "A connection that transcends physical form." He released one of her hands to take the ceremonial dagger from where she still held it. With deliberate movements, he drew the blade across his palm, leaving a thin red line that welled with blood. The metallic scent rose immediately, sharp and distinctive, yet somehow richer, more vital than human blood. "My blood carries the essence of the Alpha," he said, his voice taking on a resonant quality that seemed to vibrate in Isabella's chest. "It is offered freely, not taken." He extended his bleeding hand to her. Isabella did not hesitate. She took back the ceremonial dagger and sliced open her palm. Then she placed her palm against his, feeling the warm wetness of his blood against her skin, slick and strangely alive. Something electric passed between them at the contact. A jolt traveled up her arm and spread through her chest. She gasped, her eyes widening as she stared at Mikhail, trying to understand the sensations that defied rational explanation. His eyes flared red, not with danger but with connection. And for a moment, Isabella felt as though she could see through those eyes. She could sense the pack around them as presences rather than just people. And she could feel the moon's pull as an actual physical sensation tugging at her blood. Everything around her glowed with a living aura. "I feel it," she whispered, her composure momentarily forgotten in the face of impossible sensations. "I can feel all of you." The night air suddenly seemed alive with impressions, the collective breath of the pack, the individual sense that identified each member, the subtle shift in posture that communicated hierarchy and emotion, all hitting her senses simultaneously. Mikhail smiled, and the expression transformed his usually guarded face. The sentries of caution fell away, revealing the joy beneath. "Welcome to the pack, Isabella Santos." His voice carried pride, warmth, and something deeper she was still learning to recognize. A howl rose from the assembled wolves. First one voice, then another, until the night air vibrated with their chorus. Isabella felt it resonate within her chest, like music, like belonging, a harmony she somehow understood on a level beyond hearing. The sound seemed to wrap around her, embracing her, welcoming her. Mikhail raised their still joined hands. "Tonight we are stronger," he called over the howls, his alpha voice cutting through the noise. "Tonight our pack grows not in number alone, but in vision. In Isabella, we gain new eyes to see the human world and new wisdom to navigate its dangers. And she gains our protection, our strength, our family." He turned to her, lowering his voice to a register meant only for her, despite the supernatural hearing around them. "And I gain a partner worthy of standing beside me." The words held centuries of loneliness, of waiting. The formality of the ceremony seemed to dissolve around them as he pulled her close, his kiss fierce and possessive before the entire pack. Isabella kissed him back without reservation, her typical public reserve forgotten in the moment, feeling the approving howls of the pack surround them like an embrace. When they separated, Isabella noticed the other figures, who had been watching from the shadows at the edge of the clearing for the first time. They were non-pack members, representatives from other supernatural communities in Atlanta. She recognized the willowy form of Ilara, leader of the small community of Fae who made their home in the city's abundant parklands. The Fae woman's silver-white hair seemed to glow with its own light, her inhuman beauty both fascinating and unsettling. Beside her stood Michael Liu, the human liaison to the city's vampire enclave. His ageless face and perfect stillness marked him as clearly as the scar on his neck, where his maker had taken him centuries ago, according to the files Isabella had studied during her crash course in supernatural politics. A third figure caught Isabella's attention, a young woman she didn't recognize. She had a scarf covering her hair and large silver earrings. She wore a peasant blouse and a large flowing skirt, giving her an almost Romani feel. Her hands and forearms were heavily tattooed, and she wore what looked like bone bracelets. Isabella didn't know her, but guessed she was some form of witch. "Witnesses," Mikhail explained, following her gaze, his hand settling protectively at the small of her back. "Your acceptance affects more than just our pack. It creates precedent." "Is that good or bad?" Isabella asked, her lawyer's mind immediately assessing potential complications. "It's significant." Mikhail's careful choice of words told her volumes. No supernatural community has formally accepted a human member in generations, not in America. Before Isabella could ask more, they were surrounded by pack members offering congratulations. Damon pushed through the crowd to reach her, his face alight with excitement, his tie askew. "That was amazing," he enthused, practically bouncing on his toes. "Did you feel something when he did the blood thing? The energy in the air changed. Everyone felt it." Isabella laughed, still overwhelmed by the sensations coursing through her, but warmed by Damon's familiar enthusiasm. "I felt something impossible to describe." Her hands moved in that expressive way they did when the words failed her. "I have about 1,000 questions," Damon said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "And I have about 0 answers right now," Isabella replied, squeezing his arm affectionately. "But thank you for being here. It means the world to me." "Where else would I be?" he asked, with genuine confusion, his eyebrows drawing together. "You're still my boss, even if the job description has gotten way more interesting." She smiled at that. 6 months ago, their relationship had been strictly professional, prosecutor and assistant. They'd been through firefights, supernatural battles, and government corruption together. The bond they shared was something different, more profound. Damon lowered his voice, leaning in conspiratorially the way he did when sharing case insights. Seriously, Isabella, are you okay? This is a lot to process, even for someone who adapts as quickly as you do. His concern touched her, reminding her that Damon had always seen her more clearly than most beneath his sometimes scattered exterior. I'm good, Damon. Better than good. She glanced around at the celebration beginning to form around them, her posture visibly relaxing. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Well, that makes one of us, he joked, running a hand through his perpetually unruly hair. I still feel like I accidentally walked into someone else's movie. But at least the cast is super interesting. Das überhaupt. The celebration continued as pack members brought out food and drink. Music began. Drums and stringed instruments, which Isabella didn't recognize, played with hypnotic rhythm. The formality of the ceremony gave way to genuine festivity. The air filled with new scents. Roasting meat, mulled wine, freshly baked bread, mingling with the wood smoke and pine. Isabella found herself passed from conversation to conversation, accepted with a warmth she hadn't expected. These people, these wolves, had become her community faster than she would have believed possible. She paused near a table laden with food, realizing she was ravenous. As she reached for a plate, a young man she didn't recognize approached. His movements marked by the fluid grace common to all werewolves. You probably don't remember me, he said, a slight tremor in his voice betraying nervousness. His eyes flicking between her face and the ground. I was one of the ones you helped at the water treatment plant. I was badly hurt, and you stopped the bleeding. Isabella studied his face, her memory for details kicking in, then recognition clicked. Of course I remember. You were shot protecting the eastern exit. Ryan, right. She recalled applying pressure to his wound, using her scarf to bind it, while they were getting the injured into the SUVs. His face lit up, his shoulders straightening with surprise and pleasure. You do remember. I wanted to thank you properly for what you did, stopping the silver poisoning from spreading. The doctor said that if I had waited another few minutes, I might have lost the arm. Anyone would have done the same, Isabella said, that characteristic modesty appearing whenever her actions were praised. Ryan shook his head emphatically, his expression suddenly serious beyond his apparent youth. Number, most humans would have run the other way. You stayed and fought for us when you could have saved yourself. He held out a small wooden carving of a wolf. I made this for you. It's a tradition in my family. A token of life debt. Isabella accepted the carving, touched by the gesture. The wood was smooth under her fingers, the detail exquisite. Each strand of fur distinct, the posts alert, yet peaceful. The rich scent of cedar rose from it. Mingled with a subtle undertone she recognized as Ryan's scent, a mark that the werewolf community would recognize. Thank you, it's beautiful. She ran her thumb over the polished surface, appreciating the craftsmanship. You're packed now, Ryan said simply, as if that explained everything. Perhaps it did. As the young wolf moved away, Katerina appeared again at her side, offering a goblet of rich red wine. The liquid caught the firelight, appearing almost black except at its edges. "You're collecting quite the following already," she observed, her military bearing noticeably looser within the festive atmosphere. Isabella accepted the drink, taking a careful sip before answering. The wine exploded on her tongue, richer, more complex than anything she'd tasted before, with notes of berries, oak, and something wild and herbaceous. "It feels right," she admitted, surprise evident in her tone. "Which should be strange, but somehow isn't." "The bond helps," Katerina said, her usual clipped speech softening slightly. "Mikhail's blood carries power. You'll feel connections now that humans normally can't perceive." "Is that why everything seems so vibrant tonight? I feel like I can sense moods, intentions." Isabella gestured vaguely, trying to articulate sensations that had no precedent in her experience. Katerina nodded, a knowing look passing across her usually stoic features. "It will settle into something manageable. But yes, you're experiencing a taste of how we perceive the world." Isabella looked across the clearing to where Mikhail stood in conversation with the Fae representative. As if sensing her attention, he glanced over, his eyes meeting hers, with an intensity that made her breath catch. Even across the distance, she could feel the tug of connection between them. "He's waited a long time for you," Katerina said quietly, something like respect in her usually guarded expression. "Longer than you know." "What do you mean?" Isabella turned, curious at this rare openness from the typically reticent enforcer. But Katerina just smiled enigmatically and moved away, her usual economy of movement carrying her quickly into the crowd, leaving Isabella to wonder at her words. The celebration continued well into the night. Isabella found herself drawn to the rhythm of the drums, joining the dancing that became increasingly primal as the night deepened. She felt no self-consciousness, only a newfound freedom in movement, expression, and belonging. Her usual controlled demeanor gave way to something more instinctive, more fluid. The rhythm pulsed through her, ancient and compelling. Around her, pack members moved with inhuman grace, some fully human in form, others allowing partial shifts, eyes glowing amber or red, movements becoming more fluid and wilder. Isabella matched their energy, letting the music guide her body. The earth felt alive beneath her feet, the percussion vibrating through the soil and into her bones. "You dance like one of us," a female voice said beside her, the words carrying a musical quality unlike human speech. Isabella turned to find Ilara, the Fae leader, moving sinuously to the rhythm. Up close, the Fae woman's inhuman beauty was even more striking. Skin with a pearlescent sheen, eyes a shade of violet no human could possess. She smelled of night-blooming flowers and rain on hot stones. "Is that a compliment?" Isabella asked, her natural directness asserting itself even with this ancient being. Ilara's laugh was like wind chimes. "From me, yes. From others of my kind, perhaps not. We have complex feelings about humans who cross boundaries." Her gaze was assessing, penetrating in a way that made Isabella feel exposed. "But you're not entirely human anymore, are you? Not after tonight." Isabella faltered in her dancing, her analytical mind immediately seizing on the implication. "What do you mean?" "The blood bond with an alpha of Mikhail's lineage. It changes things." Ilara moved closer, her scent like wildflowers after rain. "Watch for the signs, Isabella Santos. The heightened senses are just the beginning." Before Isabella could question her further, Ilara spun away, melting into the crowd of dancers with unearthly grace. Isabella stood motionless momentarily, unsettled by the Fae's words, her brow furrowing. Chugger. During this brief moment alone, catching her breath at the edge of the clearing, Isabella first felt it. A strange sensation crawling along her spine like cold fingers. She straightened, suddenly alert, her body tensing when she sensed a witness was hiding something crucial. She turned, scanning the dark forest beyond the torchlight, her newly enhanced senses straining. The shadows seemed deeper, more velvet-textured than before, concealing secrets just beyond her perception. A howl rose in the distance, wild, untamed, distinct from the sounds of the celebrating pack. Something about it resonated inside her, calling to her blood in a way that felt both familiar and alien. The sound pierced through the celebration noise as though meant for her ears alone. She took an unconscious step toward the darkness, drawn by something she couldn't name. Her usually purposeful stride became almost trance-like. The forest edge seemed to beckon, the spaces between trees like doorways to another world. Isabella! Mikhail's hand on her arm brought her back to herself, his touch warm and grounding. She blinked at him, disoriented, her usually sharp focus momentarily scattered. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty, foreign to her typical confident tone. His expression was unreadable, but his fingers tightened slightly on her arm. "Yes. What did you feel?" "It was like it was calling specifically to me." She shook her head, pushing back a strand of dark hair that had fallen across her face. "That's impossible, isn't it? I'm still human. I shouldn't be able to understand wolf calls." Mikhail's hand moved down to interlace with hers, his thumb rubbing small circles against her skin. "The bond between us is new. It may have unexpected effects. Your Fae friend said something similar. What aren't you telling me, Mikhail?" Isabella's eyes narrowed slightly. His expression softened, the careful mask he wore in public slipping to reveal genuine concern beneath. "Nothing ominous. The blood bond is ancient magic, older than written pack history. Its effects aren't always predictable, especially with someone of your particular strengths." "My particular strengths? I'm a lawyer with a gun and decent cardiovascular fitness. Nothing special." She gave a self-deprecating smile, but continued watching him closely. Mikhail's smile was enigmatic. "We both know that's not true. Your perception, resilience, and ability to see through Victor's disguise aren't ordinary human traits." Before she could press him for clarification, a commotion near the ceremonial center drew their attention. The pack historian was calling for quiet, his aged voice cracking with excitement as he held what appeared to be an ancient scroll aloft. The parchment looked fragile, yellowed with age, its edges crumbling slightly in the old man's trembling hands. "The prophecy speaks!" the old man cried, his voice cracking excitedly. "After centuries, the words align with the stars." Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Mikhail's expression tightened, his jaw setting in that way Isabella had come to recognize as concern. "What prophecy?" Isabella asked, her chin lifting slightly in that questioning tilt that had made witnesses squirm on the stand. Mikhail shook his head slightly, a subtle gesture of caution. "Later," he said quietly. This is not the moment. The historian's eyes found Isabella in the crowd, widening as they took her position beside Mikhail, their hands still connected. The torchlight flickered across his aged face, deepening the lines, making him appear as ancient as the scroll he held. "The human who runs with wolves," the old man intoned, reading from the scroll, his voice taking on a rhythmic quality, "shall bridge the ancient divide. When moon-blessed blood mingles with daylight strength, the old powers will awaken from their slumber." A hush fell over the celebration. Isabella felt the weight of every gaze shift toward her, some curious, some wary, some excited. The only sounds were the crackling of torches and the distant whisper of wind through the forest canopy. The distant howl came again, closer this time, sending an involuntary shiver through her body. Something in that sound seemed to call directly to her blood, to the place where Mikhail's essence now mingled with hers. "It seems," Mikhail said quietly beside her, his accent thickening with what might have been concern, "that our bond has set something in motion that even I did not anticipate." Isabella looked up at him, questions forming on her lips, but the intensity in his eyes silenced her. Whatever this meant, it would wait. Tonight was for celebration, for beginning their life together officially. The historian rolled up the scroll, the moment of prophecy passing as quickly as it had arrived. The music resumed, though conversations now buzzed with speculation. "Dance with me," Mikhail said suddenly, pulling her toward the fire at the center of the clearing. His unexpected lightness contrasted with the gravity of the moment before. "Tonight is ours. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges." Isabella let herself be led, pushing away questions, prophecies, and strange howls. She had made her choice, had pledged herself to this man, this pack, this new reality. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The drums accelerated, the dancers moved faster around the fire, and Isabella surrendered to the rhythm, the night and her new beginning. The flames leapt higher, casting ever-shifting shadows across the celebrating pack, sparks rising to meet the star-filled sky above.